Okay. We'll start with what is your full name?
Clara. You want the my married name or maiden name?
You're married's good.
Married. Clara, Clara, Almeida, Almeda, McCullough.
Okay.
M with the little C, the big C, Ullough.
Okay. And your maiden name was?
Saban, Sabean.
Okay. Who were your parents?
My mother was Dorothy Haight, Haight, and married Ira Saban, Ira Sabean.
Who were your grandparents?
On the Haight side, James Desbury. I didn't give the middle name for my mom and dad, did I? If you want it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. My mom's middle name was Almeida, the same as mine, and my dad was Malcolm.
Okay.
Ira Malcolm, after his dad.
Okay.
So on the Haight side, it was James, my mother's side, James Desbury, Desbry, and Haight is spelled with an A, Haight. And the grandmother, which I never knew, she died when my mom was just a baby, was Annie Maria, Maria. A lot of people would call it Maria, but it was two words, Annie Maria, they called it, Maria Lewis. And that was my, like I had a step-grandmother after, because Grandpa married again.
Okay.
My mother was the youngest of first 8, and then he was single, and his oldest daughter got married. It was a double wedding, got married with him for his second marriage, and he had another 8.
Oh,
So there were 16.
Wow.
Yeah, Grandpa had 16, but it was 2 wives. And then on my dad's side, it was Malcolm Bruce, Sabean, Saban, and my grandmother was Ezilpha, Ezilpha, Adeline Haight, Haight, and she was a sister to my Grandpa Jim. So it made Mom and Dad cousins.
Okay.
And it was double, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Both sides of the family.
Yeah.
And my mother used to talk about, she knew way back then, they used to talk about, they wouldn't use the word genes, but she knew way back then that you shouldn't be marrying cousins because it may be effective to some of the children. And she'd look at us and she'd say, well, I had 8, and I guess they're all okay. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
When were you born?
November 13, 1931.
And where were you born?
In the blue house right over there, you can see. All 8 of us. I'm the youngest of 8. All 8 of us were born in that house right up there. And my grandfather and step-grandmother lived here at the time when I was born over there.
How did you feel being the youngest child of 8?
I felt like a plaything to some of my brothers that was still around. My brother next to me was 13. And I was really treated like something special. I realize now. The gifts I got, like at Christmas time, was so much to what other people got. But it was like the brothers given to me. And, I mean, if they took to wrestling, I was right in the middle, too, and things like this. So I was like a plaything, Mm-hmm. So.
What did your father do for a living?
Well, he had no education. He never went to school. So it was just taking care of his own properties, planting garden, and at the time we had a big apple orchard up back, what I remember, and you didn't have to spray at that time. We had a really good crop of apples, would go in the basement in the winter along with in the fall, along with vegetables, and then he would cut wood and had cattle in the barn to buy, sell, and probably kill our own beef and like that. So he just made his own living, like you would say, laborer, I guess.
Do you know what the reason was why he didn't go to school to get an education when he was younger?
A lot of them at that time didn't go unless they really had to, because he was needed at home to work. Yeah. But if you could see him write his signature, he learned to write that, and he was far better with writing than, oh, it was so neat. And he wrote it. He didn't print it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Could you describe to me what a typical work day for your mother would be like?
Well, you see, I was the youngest of 8. My older siblings would have remembered more so, I think. But they was always up fairly early because there was barn chores. And while they did the barn chores, my mother prepared breakfast. And like I said, she had all 8 of us, but some of them was out and married and had children before I was born. So I've got nieces and nephews older than I am. But she boarded practically all the school teachers too that came in that small house. I don't know how she did it. The school teachers liked to get handy. See, it was right over here. So she boarded the school teachers, and she raised a boy that was, well, he was local, but his mom had died, and he was homesick everywhere but with Mom and Dad. So at 12 years old, he came to live at our house. Then he married my oldest sister after they lived like brother and sister. And he married her. Now they're both dead, of course. But, and then speaking about the ones that own the school, and it's my niece that owns it now, that family would be my brother Fred and his wife, moved back from the States after 3 were born down there. And they moved in with us too in that small house, so that the one that's my age, we learned to talk together and walk together. And then the one next to us was born in that house before they got out in a place of their own. And then there was one after, and that one was born in hospital. All the others were born at home. Yeah. So she just kept going all day long, I know, but she was fast. I mean, I'm slow. And, well, see, this is too where my mom and dad lived, in this house. Well, I guess I should say, I lived there till I was 14 in that house. And then my brother, that next to me, that was in the Second World War, was wounded in Italy, came home, and well, they didn't send him home because of the wound or anything like that. They looked after it. He was wounded in Italy, and they flew him to England and had to do surgeries, and you know, it healed up over there. That he wasn't sent home, but it was when the war ended, like, you know, and he was sent home. And you have a bit of, what is it they call, gratuity money, I think, to put towards a business. And he thought he'd like to put a store up. So he wanted our property there. So the little old store you see there now is the original store that my brother, with another brother's help, they put that store up. And then, because they were putting that up, of course, he wanted our old homestead to live in. And we went out the road a mile, Mom, Dad and I, out that way for 2 years. On the sharp turn out there, you might remember? About a mile out.
Yeah.
Okay, we lived there on that sharp turn for 2 years. Mom was never content there because you only seen one-way traffic. She lived so many years here at the intersection and seen everything. She just felt she was going away from everything. And my another brother owned this, which was my grandparents' place, but it was a shack. It was just a shell, really. And so Dad, being a rough carpenter, he thought maybe he could do something with it because my brother got discouraged. It had no basement, just a little square hole out where my washing machine sits now. And I remember it. It was just a mud hole, just the size of the washer, and just, well, steep enough, I should say, for anyone's height, you know. And it was a straight ladder, went right down, not on a slant, straight ladder went down. So this is where they kept the milk and cream and homemade butter, and very few vegetables. There was no space. And so anyway, my brother, he fell heir to this because he stayed here with my step-grandmother until she got bedridden. And she gave him the place for being here company. He had to work days, but he was here with her at night. Then when she got bedridden, my mother took her over there, and she was in bed 4 months before she died, with the busy lifestyle my mom had, and nothing to work with. No electricity or anything, you know, outside toilet. All this. So anyway, when my brother got discouraged with this, he thought, I've got a cousin in Amherst. I think I'd like to go to Amherst and see if I could get a job. And he did. So then Dad did buy this place. I did know at the time what he paid, but I can't remember. But it was really ready to fall down. And when my brother had raised it, see, on jacks to make a full basement, he was bringing it up a lot higher even than what it is now. It come apart on that wall right there. It came apart because it had been built in sections, and it spread at the bottom. And this is why he just was discouraged, you know. We hadn't known it was in 2 pieces. So they let it go back to where it was repairable and fixed the crack where it split in 2. And then my dad went from there after he bought it and was a rough carpenter, and there was an old barn standing out there, and he took a lot of barn boards and put in the house to you know, fix it up and then gyprock over it and things like that. Well, of course, over the years, that was 1948. So over the years, I've been in here, see, over 50 years in this house, because I moved back with Mom and Dad here. And then when I married in 51, my husband moved in. And then Dad died after we were married, like we were married on his 70th birthday. We planned to be married on June 15th. And he said, why would you wait till June 15th when my birthday is the 8th? You could bring it up and we can be married on my birthday. Which we did. I'm glad we did that. And so I'll always remember, he was 70 the year, or the day we were married. He was 70. And then he was 77 when he died. And then that was in 1958. And my mother died in 1968, 10 years later. So I've been in this house over 50 years. But anyway, over the years, we've just gone from one room to another and did it all over. And then one room at a time, or as we could afford it, even when they were living. And then, well, since Mom died, that was in 68, why, we've gone over it again. You know how you do these things. You decide you want to improve it or change it or whatnot. And so, anyway, so the latest I think we did was this room. These beams, it's the original beam. It's right underneath that. And the carpenter doing it was teasing me that he was going to leave them bare beams out with, well, wooden pegs, square nails, and bark still on, just hewn out by hand, you know, with axe and whatnot. And I said, well, you know, I was just thinking, I was considering if you could put wood over to cover each one. I was thinking I'd like it done this way to gain a little height. We have low ceilings, and you see where the light fixture is now. Now it would have been down to, well, about the bottom of the board there, see? And a lot of people come in our door out there and they'll whack their head or whatever and have to duck around lights because we do have low ceilings and we have a few tall people come in. So, yeah.
What did you think about having all the teachers board at your house?
It was just a normal thing, and they all made a lot of me, and I mean, I seemed to do well in school. I don't know that I was, you know, anything special to them, but I feel that I was, now a lot of people would think I way back they would say that I was really smart, like, to take off at school, because we used to double grade, primary and grade 1 and 2. Sometimes you'd double grade, take 2 in a year, and I did that to start. But anyway, some would think I was extra smart, but I didn't feel I was. I just knew that if I was going to pass, I had to study. And I always put a lot of work in my studies, which is a lot I know would read it once and they knew what was there. I wasn't like that. But I wanted it right, so I would keep at it, till I got it. So I always made good marks, and I got through grade 10 over there. And I probably would have gone for 11 and 12, which I haven't needed. But at the time, this school closed. They were building the Digby school, and they'd be bussed in, but it was 1 year before it would be ready. And so the smaller grades was taken like out to North Range, where it's where the hall is now. That was a 2-department school. And then they were there for a bit before they built the one in Barton. So if I could have gone on the school bus right the very next year at my door, like my daughter did, I'm sure I would have gone for 11 and 12. But I haven't needed it, so didn't matter.
So would those teachers pay like a weekly fee to your
Yes,
mother?
yes. Yeah.
And did you have any of them for a teacher as well?
Oh, all of them. That, while I was going to school, yeah. And my brothers and sisters had them too, Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
How would you be disciplined at school?
Same as, the whole class, like a one-room school, it was. All grades, primary through grade 10, one teacher, and it was like she'd combine maybe, I'll say like maybe 5 and 6 math would be together, and maybe a reading class of grade 7 and 8, something like that. But we all knew that, we were supposed to behave. There's a little mischief in any school. Nothing serious like they have today and you hear on TV. No.
What kinds of things would you have to memorize in school?
Well, we used to have to memorize a verse now and then out of our reader. And then I was good at spelling, and I wish I could remember now, because if I'm writing a letter it doesn't look right, I have to get the dictionary out, and maybe I've got it right. It just doesn't look right to me. But we used to have a spelling bee. Sometimes, I think, but once a week, maybe once a month, I don't know, on a Friday afternoon, and, they'd line up on the one side of the school and then on the other, and anyway, I know several times I kept right to the top because I could spell. So, anyway, yeah, I remembered those things.
Yeah.
I've still got my grading cards.
Oh, my
I kept them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that school then is still standing today?
It is. You can just look right out, if you want, right out that, I'm hooked up to wire here. Can I move? You just,
that's it right there.
That's it right over there, and the name is on it. It says South Range West SEC, means Section 21, and they put that right back on when they bought it, because to them it meant something,
Right.
and I'm glad they did. Their oldest son painted it all over again, and so it does need painting again, but anyway, going up this way, there was a South Range East school, and, well, it's down, and nobody remembers it I've talked to, whether it was Section 22 or Section 20, but it would have been either one under this one or over. This is Section 21.
Okay.
And South Range East was written on that, and this is South Range West.
What kinds of things would you do with your friends at school?
Well, I don't know. We used to play games, outdoor games, tag and things like that, go for walks or whatever, Of course, the friends were my nieces and nephews and because it was all family lived there when I was growing up. It was, well, my maiden name was Sabin, and I had brothers that had children in school here that went by the name Sabin. And, well, I could even show you, I've got the names of, I forget what grade it was now, grade 8, I think. I've got the names all down that year that the teacher had written everything down, and the trustee's name is on, and the secretary to the trustees and all that, and the students' names and all. There were a lot of Sabins on there.
Wow.
Yeah. So my friends was mostly relatives. Yeah.
What would your daily chores consist of?
Back then, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we always burned firewood, so I probably didn't have to do as much as my older brothers and sisters, because, I mean, you know, there were fewer of us at home. But I know when I got from school, I was supposed to fill the wood box. That would be any time after 4 o'clock. Fill the wood box for overnight. And then I didn't have to help at noon dishes. I felt slighted because I had to go home for my lunch at 12, where all these others that walked for a mile and a quarter, you know, different ways to walk to school, no buses then, they could carry their lunch. And I never got to have sandwiches, and I felt slighted, you know. It was stupid of me, wasn't it? Because I could have a hot meal. So if we had a real stormy day, I might go home at recess, which was very stupid too. 11:15, we had recess. 11:15 till 11, 15 minutes. I probably would go home on a stormy day and get my sandwich so I could have lunch at school with the others, because I had to go home every time for my meals. And then I helped with dishes, like my mother usually washed them, but I know when I was way back then, I used to dry the dishes, but anyway, I didn't have to do a lot of things, no.
What was your favorite holiday when you were a child?
I suppose Christmas, yeah, because I was a long while catching on about Santa. I recognized my mother's writing on, too. It was said from Santa Claus, and I knew it was my mother's writing. Yeah, that's how I caught on.
What would it be like at your house when the catalog arrived?
Well, I think we all looked at it, but, you know, back then you didn't have much money. You just got what you really needed. I just wish back when I was going to school there were Frenchy stores back then like there are now.
Yes.
I got so many things now I can't get my closets
I know.
closed or the drawers closed.
Where else would you get the things that you needed?
Well, groceries, the same store is in Dowsettville that stood when I was a kid. It's called Quickway now, but it's the same building. And my dad used to go there and get our groceries. And that would be probably once a week. And I mean, we used a lot then. Molasses was by the gallon, which I still buy it by the gallon.
Wow.
But I mean, they drew it out of a big barrel then. See, I clerked at this store over here when my brother was out delivering or whatnot, and the molasses used to come in a big wooden barrel, like, or keg they called it, and you just had like a tap you'd open to fill someone's jug.
Okay.
The molasses came that way, and I filled several, and the kerosene came that way in a metal barrel with like a tap, and the kerosene was for lamps, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody burned wood but had kerosene for light. Yeah.
How much spending money would you have as a child?
I don't think I had very much. I used to pick blueberries in the summer, but I was a slow picker. Of course, if they sold, it was mine. And anyway, the first I remember about having much spending money, when this family allowance started, you got it like till you was 16. I don't know now. You get it for older than that, I think
it is.
if you're in school. Well, then you got it up until 16. I was like about 14 and a half when they come out with this. So I was allowed, it was $8. Mine was $8 a month. I was allowed that $8 for my spending money for that year and a half till I was 16.
$8.
$8 is what it was. I don't know what it is now. I mean, we drew for our daughter. I can't even remember what that was, but I mean, it's probably up quite a bit now. And if there's a family of 5, you know, yeah, it's a good sized check, I think. Yeah.
What was your religion?
You mean the name of the denomination, or Protestant, Catholic, or whatever?
Yeah, Protestant or Catholic.
Protestant.
Okay.
Protestant.
And what would Sundays be like at your house when you were younger?
It was very strict, like you didn't work on Sundays. You didn't play games on Sunday. You didn't swim on Sunday. I've changed. I would swim on Sunday, and I would play a game on Sunday. Another thing, my parents never believed in what I'll call the devil cards, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They weren't allowed in the house. And my dad had been in some logging camps where they had gambled, playing poker and gambled and all this and that, and he was very down on cards. And they weren't allowed in the house. Now, they're in my house, but I don't know anything about it. I can't enjoy playing a card game. It still goes back to what Dad thought of them, you know?
Yeah.
But when my daughter brought them in, I didn't say, you can't bring them in, because I couldn't see the point, you know. Anyway, they are in the house, but no, we weren't allowed to play cards. And like I said, my mom prepared the meals on Saturday for Sunday, so that you just had to heat them out. You know, there was like baked beans or potato scallop or something you could heat up. And, well, if she had unexpected company, she might make a quick batch of biscuits or something like that. But no, it was just you got into your Sunday clothes, which we didn't have slacks back then. You got into your Sunday clothes. We had to walk a mile, which is this way going up towards Bear River. We had to walk a mile to the church, which is still standing, same church. And it was a dirt road. If you had new shoes, you'd get blistered heels, and you'd have dust on your shoes about this thick when you got there. And you had to have a hat. In the summer, it was a straw hat, and probably tied under your chin here. In the winter, it was a different style hat, a knitted type or whatnot. And we had to walk. And then, well, there were a few had cars, you know, but we walked in time for Sunday school at 10 o'clock. Then some of us had to walk home. A few had cars, so maybe the older ones got rides home. And then in the afternoon, it was to be very quiet. I mean, you could read or go for a walk or write a letter, maybe, but you had to be very quiet. Then there'd be church again in the evening. And you stayed in your dress clothes all day. It isn't like now. You get home, take your dressy things off, and get into a pair of slacks. Yeah.
Wow.
So you learned to respect Sunday. Anyway, it was, yeah.
How did you keep up with what was going on in the outside world?
Well, we had no telephones. We had a battery radio in that house over there. And we had no electricity while we lived there at all. But we did have, when we moved out there, the 2 years we lived out on the hill, I'll call it. And then this had to be wired when we moved in here. And it was just one plug in each room, you know, or whatnot. So then when you started to buy appliances, we've had to do over and over because you didn't have plugs, you know, for things. But to keep contact with the outside world, we never did take the daily paper. It was just battery radio and, well, the weekly courier. That was always in the house, you know. And our mail system was really good, better than now. We had a mail driver living back here, and our post office was up this road, and there was one on North Range Corner, and the train is how, like, the mail traveled by train. And this mail driver, he didn't have to stay for 2 mails, but he used to pick up our mail in the morning. He'd go up to this post office. He'd have Dowseville mail, and he'd go up to this post office, and then he'd go out to North Range and pick up what was there and take it down to the train. And then he filled in his day enough that he met 2 trains with mail that was sorted there before he come back. And you got mail quick. Now I can get a letter from my daughter, like from Halifax, can be in the mail a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What different things would you grow and raise yourself?
In the garden?
Yeah.
Mostly everything. Yeah. Well, the potatoes the main thing. We always tried to have enough to fill the potato bin for all winter. We still try to do that, but we didn't have very good crop this year. But anyway, you would have them until they come again, like next year in August. You'd have your own potatoes. But no, it was turnip, corn and parsnip. We planted dry beans so that we shelled them out and baked for baked beans. Plus, we still do that some. And then our green string beans, peas, carrots, and yeah, most everything. I guess we never, nowadays people plant zucchini, which I never heard of, and green peppers. We never. And back then for greens, all we had was turnip greens or beet greens. But now we do plant Swiss chard, which I never heard tell of when I was a kid. And, but, we had the necessary things.
What sorts of things would you barter for?
Well, now, what do you mean about that? That's
like trade, if maybe we should
yeah.
some of your vegetables for some fish, or...
Yeah, that happened. Maybe not with us, but with my parents. Yeah. Because they thought they had to have in the winter a pail in the basement of salt herring, which I did not want to eat. It's so full of bones. Now I could enjoy a little piece of it, I think, the taste, but I was a very fussy eater anyway. But I think probably, my parents probably traded something in like apples maybe or vegetables for that. I think they might have. Yeah.
How did electricity change things for you?
Well, it was quite a switch from having the outside toilet. Do you know, it took me a while to get adjusted to sit on an inside toilet after being outside, and here you are in the house. When I think of it, I couldn't part with it now, but then, my daughter never knew what an outside toilet was. And I don't think she'd adjust to an outside toilet. But anyway, that was one thing was very different. And then the washing machine, which was the wringer washer to start. And I still liked it better than my automatic. It did a better job. Less wrinkles, cleaner clothes. Yeah, did a lot better job, the wringer washer, than what the automatic does. Yeah.
What would bath night be like at your house?
That was sometime on Saturday. It might not be night, it might be Saturday afternoon. Now that was different too. I've said to some of them, we must have been, or people must have thought we were dirty years ago. We felt clean, but my mother had, in all the bedrooms, she had a bowl and pitcher set,
Yep.
them heavy bowls and pitchers, and there was a toothbrush brush holder and a soap dish that matched, and all these she had set up in the bedrooms. And so we brought the pitcher and got our water the temperature we wanted it, took to our bedroom and poured in the bowl. And of course you started from the face down, your feet was last. Well, by the time you got to the bottom, the water was quite cold, and it was a little dirty. But when I think of how you get in the shower now and it teems over and over you, and we managed with that, what would go in a little bowl.
Wow.
We felt clean, anyway. Yeah.
Who was the doctor when you were growing up?
Dr. Harris. Lived in Barton.
Who would deliver the babies?
Well, the doctors came to the homes when they got word. Now, we didn't have phones back this far. They did in certain places, you know, but they would have to go sometimes with a horse or whatever to let the doctor know if it was winter, snow, whatnot. But my mother was a midwife, and she counted up to the 50th baby, and then she didn't count more. But she was on all these cases, and I didn't know what was going on as I grew up, you know. No slacks at that time, like I said. She had this pair of black bloomers, it would only be like a material, this jersey knit stuff, you know. But they'd come way down here, and when I'd be going to bed, I'd see that she'd laid out these black bloomers, they were black, and extra clothes on her trunk, because we each one had a trunk in our room then. That's where we put our clothes. You didn't have closets, maybe a dresser with a couple of drawers, but you still had things in trunk, you know. And so she'd lay these things out, and when I'd get up in the morning, Mom would be gone. And Dad would say, well, such and such got sick in the night, and she had to go. I hadn't heard any commotion. It could have been somebody come with a horse, you know, if it was winter and it was snowing. If it wasn't, the odd one had a car way back, but I hadn't heard any of this. And then it would be sometime during the day, she'd get home and, oh, there was a baby at that house. And I'd say, well, what did they name it? Well, back then you didn't have to name them quick, you know, like you do now. And then I thought, she seems awful tired, and sometimes she'd sneak a nap if she could. She didn't always have time, because she'd have to go to work preparing supper. And so anyway, I was a while catching on. I bet you I was a teenager before I knew that she was going to help deliver baby. They never talked about it then, you know. And I mean, they didn't have maternity clothes like now. They just wore something loose. And if I saw somebody, I wouldn't have known they were pregnant, because it was just, they just wore like a big coverall thing, like, you know, that you pull over your head. Well, it reminded me of a Johnny shirt like you see at the hospital. And so I wouldn't have caught on if anybody was pregnant till I was in my teens, I know. Because nobody talked about it. Now it's taught in schools. Yep.
How would you have taken care of your teeth back then?
I don't know if I didn't take as good a care of them as I should have, but it was, you know, we had toothpaste like now and a toothbrush, but I had, like my two big teeth here in front, I had knocked one out with sliding, you know, slamming and sledding and coming down on it. I had knocked one out, and then the other I had knocked out with turning our cream separator, you know, and the handle come around, hit me in the mouth. And so, and when I had a toothache, I just couldn't stand it. It made me sick all over. So I never thought of fillings, and back then they didn't fill anyway, you know, fill your teeth. So if I had a toothache, boys, it had to come out of my head, because I couldn't stand it, that throbbing, you know, as it was gathered. So I just got them out. Well, when it got to the point here now, when I think of it, you know, maybe I could have saved mine where the denture never fit. I probably could have, but I think what discouraged me was because these two main ones had got broken, you know. But I haven't had any trouble with my upper, so I could have cared for my lowers. And, you know, I just wasn't particular about cleaning them as often as I should and like that, because, well, they were broken here in the front, and if you smiled here, there's no teeth there.
So, how often would you see a dentist then?
Only when I had a toothache, just to get it pulled out. It wasn't always a dentist either. It was a medical doctor sometimes. Pulled them out. They'd just freeze, and it hurt then too. You feel the needle going in, where now it's like it freezes gradual. You would really feel it going into the bone. And then when you got home, it would pain when the freezing was coming out, which now it doesn't. You know. So, but I could stand that better than I couldn't put up with a toothache. Used to make me sick all over.
When someone died, what was the wake like?
Well, we weren't Catholic, so there wasn't a wake.
Okay.
No. Well, way back when I was a kid, see, they were even laid out in the homes. They weren't in a funeral home like now. When I was real small, I mean, they were laid out at home. So, it was a very sad occasion, and everybody crying, you know, and kisses and hugs and people bringing in food and things like that, you know, and thinking you'd eat better if somebody prepared it. Well, they kind of still do those things, you know, but I mean, the body isn't in the home now. It's at the funeral home, so you get away from that, which is night and day when it's in the house. Yeah.
I'm going to move on to some questions about when you were growing up now. How often would you leave South Range?
Not very often when I was growing up. I mean, it would be to Digby or Weymouth. That would have been it. And maybe Bear River to the Cherry Carnival once a year. Yeah.
And what was the Cherry Carnival?
Well, they still have it. Bear River is called the Switzerland of Nova Scotia. Maybe you've studied that. Because Switzerland is hilly, and Bear River is hilly. And in our studies, we had that. It's noted as the Switzerland of Nova Scotia. Well, anyway, they're noted for cherries. And so every July, they'd have a cherry carnival. And they still do.
Okay.
But, I mean, I don't go anymore. They have a parade and midway and all this, like, for a whole day. I don't go anymore, you know. But that was way back when I was a kid. They had the cherry carnival. Yeah.
What were the roads like when you were younger?
Mud in the spring. And the road from, like here at the intersection going towards Weymouth, I remember, see, I lived in that house, and it was just the width of, well, I guess you'd say one car or a horse wagon, you know. It was just that width. Grass always grew in the middle of the road because it wasn't used that much. You could go right straight through, but I mean, you know, it just wasn't used that much. So the grass grew up. Well, I mean, they've widened them all now for, well, they're 2-lane if they were paved, you know, because school buses travel and all like that. But anyway, no, we had mud spring. Every spring, just terrible. And, well, even after we were married, my husband, his business was a self-employed trucker. He had his own 3-ton truck.
Okay.
He's been stuck in the mud with a big 3-ton truck here in the spring. So that's what we've gone through with before we got paved. And now they need recapping. They're just terribly rough. You know, it's been over 20 years and they spend money somewhere else. They can't recap them all, you know, so.
Now, who would maintain the roads back
Well, it was like, well, now they call it Department of Transportation. Back then it was called Highway Department, I believe. Yeah. And they had like a super, you know, and that one person had to, well, it would be walk probably, they didn't have a vehicle, had to check all the roads and see that the ditches was cleared and the little brooks that run here and there that they run through, not plugged with Beaver Dam or something like that, you know. And so this was, you know, and then they'd have to call in, well, some truck to bring gravel if there was a washout, things like that.
What did you expect to do when you grew up?
I don't think I ever thought about it that much. I just didn't know what I did want to be. And then by me being the youngest of the family, and let me see now, just how old was I? 14, 15, something like that. My mother had a surgery. She was 63 anyway. I was needed home that year. They don't keep you as down like they did back then, but I mean, it was down on your knees to scrub a floor, wash a floor, I should say, because we had no bare floors. I mean, my brothers and sisters would remember bare wood floors, but when I came along, we always had carpets that you could wash, but it was always every Saturday. You was down on your knees with a pail and the, your scrub cloth, wash the floors. So those types of things my mom couldn't do after surgery. So it seemed like I was needed. So I just stayed home, and then I just always stayed at home. And when we come from that house back here, see, my brother had put his store up here, and so he wanted some help, like with clerking, and give him a little free time, because he had a wife and some family, which she needed to be at the house. She did book work for him. But anyway, I started out there 25 cents an hour, and I kept my own time. It usually wasn't mornings, usually afternoon. 25 cents an hour, and I was happy with it, and it seemed to add up. If I wanted to buy anything, I had my spending money, and then it got advanced to $2 an hour by the time I quit.
Now, how did you enjoy working there at the store?
I liked it. Yeah, with everybody coming in to talk, I liked it. Yeah. Mhm.
Who were your screen idols?
That would be TV screen.
Yes.
Well, I'm not crazy over TV. I'm not one that enjoys TV a lot. Now, those good shows, some I'm saying, I have, like, they've taken off, them family shows.
Yeah.
Now I like Seventh Heaven, really, like now, and Wind at My Back, some of these, family shows. But, and I like a good movie. It's a good, clean family movie for 2 hours. I'd like that. But as far as these game shows and Drew Carey, I think that's so filthy, what I mean. It's just, it turns you off. I'm not one that, so I really don't know. See, I forget the names of some of them. I did like some of them on the shows there. Oh, Lindsay, what was her name? Lindsay Wagner? I liked her. I think she was on $1 Million Woman or something like that. Well, I forget now what she played on. I think it was. But anyway, I liked her. But as far as now, I don't know that there's any special. And we've only had TV, what? I don't know. We've had this one 17 years, but we had some before that. But I'm not a TV fan. I would rather get my hands busy knitting, sewing, and whatnot. And that, to me, is a waste of time. If it's something I can listen to, and I do watch the news, but no, I'm not a TV fan. Somebody will say to me, did you watch that show on TV? Oh, what show? Oh, I didn't know it was on.
Okay. What kinds of music did you like when you were younger?
Well, I didn't play myself, but we had a pump organ in the house. My mother and Dad bought it new in 1902 when they were married. And I just got rid of it about 2 years ago to my daughter. Now, I used to sit up and I couldn't read the notes, but I could pick it out kind of, just, I had no music teacher or anything tell me anything. So I just could play to amuse myself a little like that. I wouldn't be able to do it now because I forgot this little bit I did know. But anyway, my mother wanted my daughter to have that organ. And she told me this before she died. And my daughter Paula was only 4 when she died. And I thought, well, this is strange. My mother wants her to have it. She'd probably not be interested at all in music. Well, anyway, she was. And through the Barton School, that would be before grade 6, because at grade 7 you went into Digby, she took a few music lessons out there that one year. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they were half-hour lessons one teacher for 8 students, and they had to hurry through because they had to get ready to go on the bus. Sometimes she didn't even get to sit down at the bench. And she had her book to bring home to study from, and the teacher warned her, don't you go ahead in the book. Well, she paid no attention, and she went right straight through, studying the timing and all this and that. And I paid out $50 for those music lessons. Now she's full-time organist in a church in Halifax.
Oh, nice.
It was all what she did for herself, because I only paid out that. And if she wasn't so busy, I would like her to go to some music teacher and take a course and write exams to see where she stands. She does an Easter cantata and a Christmas cantata every year in the church she's in. And there's some quite hard pieces, and I tell you, she has to move her hands on, it's a clavinova what she plays.
Okay.
Yeah, in the church there. So, anyway, I said to her, you know, I've told you over and over that my mom said you was to have the organ. And she said, yes. And I said, well, when are you going to take it? Oh, she just shrugged like this, you know, because they'd gone out, well, maybe her husband got it, and still she might have, I don't know. She's got an electric organ, which she had to practice on home, so when she got to church, she'd know what she was doing. So, anyway, 2 or 3 years ago, I said, you've got to get that organ out of my house. Because, see how small our living room is, and we had to squeeze it in here, because that's our bedroom in there. And there just wasn't room for an organ. And I thought, well, I kind of hate to see it out of the house. It's always been in the house. And the school teachers that my mom boarded, they all played it, you know. And I'd heard it over and over. And I thought, well, it's no good to me. Mom wants her to have it, so I want to fulfill her wishes. So I said to Paula, you've got to take the organ. And she said, do you think I'll dust it? And I said, no, because you won't have time. And Mum wanted everything shining, so she used to keep putting varnish on and varnish on. It wasn't Varathane then. It could be any color varnish, and it was getting darker and darker, but it would shine. That's what she wanted. The music in it is as good as ever. I don't think it needs tuning at all. So Paula finally got it up there, and they had to have help get it on half done and help to get it off. It's on rollers, but it's heavy. And she says when she goes to practice on her electric, she has to go to that pump one, which has the one keyboard, and she can get more out of it in practice than she could out of the electric. It's got more octaves or whatever, I don't know. Yeah, she can get more out of it. So she's using it anyway.
Good for her.
Yeah, so, no, I wasn't, but I did sing in the choir, the church choir here for 35 years or longer, till I put dentures in my mouth, and then they would just not stay put. They would wee-wall every which way. And it's just like I think, too, with age, your voice creaks and cracks as you get older. But I did alto for years, and I sang in different places, mostly with my cousin. He'd take soprano, and I did the alto, and we did duets everywhere for years it was. So that way, I mean, I could sing, but I couldn't play.
How did you meet your husband?
Well, I met him in South Range. He has a sister living here. She's still here. And he came to live with her and was doing some work. Well, it was woods work with her husband. Her husband's dead now, but anyway. This is how I met him. He was from in back of Weymouth, Riverdale, his way, like dead end Riverdale. That's where he was from, but he come to South Range to work is how I met him. Mm.
Okay. How old were you when you got married?
19 and a half.
And what do you remember about your wedding?
Well, it was on a Friday. We were married in Weymouth at the parsonage at 7 o'clock. I had no long white dress. I had a blue that come to about here. I've still got it. Ice blue is what it's called. Ice blue taffeta. And, well, I'd bought a new, like, hat, purse, and coat, you know, for, like, travel or whatnot. And we had the 2 attendants, which was my niece who lived in that house over there. She's in Ontario now. And she's just a year younger. And my husband's cousin was our other attendant. So we went for 7 o'clock for the wedding. And I mean, boy, 7:30 you were out of there. So we come home to this house. And when we got here, it was full of people for a reception. And I guess we knew there was going to be a reception. But I mean, it's a small place, and it was June, you know what I mean? So some could get out on the doorsteps and sit out around some of the men. But at that time, nobody catered to a wedding like they do now. It was all my immediate family that did the reception, like brought the sandwiches and sweets, like sister-in-laws and sisters, and I had 2 sisters, and my sister-in-laws, and, well, some of my nieces. They all brought the food. It was here. No, yes, we had electricity then. Yeah, I'm just thinking, I guess no coffee. All tea drinkers. So we had cold drinks and tea. Yeah, and that'll soon be 50 years, see. This next June.
Wow.
Whew, I don't know where that went.
How much would you have known about the birds and the bees before you were married?
Well, not nearly as much as let me see, at 19 and a half, I didn't know back then as much as the 7 and 8 year olds would know now, because it's taught in school. And I wouldn't have known a lot of things way back then, no, that I know now.
What certain things do you remember about the Depression?
Well, now, did we have that in my time? I've heard Mom talk about it. Now, what year? Does it give you the year there?
I didn't say what year, but it would have been...
I think it was before 31, I believe.
It would have been before 31.
Yes, so I don't know. I don't remember that. What I do remember, and I still have a couple of the ration coupon books. I keep everything, you know.
That's good.
It'll be the war from 39 to 45. I think that was the years for the last World War. We could only get certain things with ration coupons. Sugar was one thing, I know. And so my mom had a book, Dad had a book, and I had a book. And it has your signature in it. And some of the coupons are still in that I've saved that we haven't, didn't get to tear out. So you could only get so much on these coupons, things that were scarce at wartime. Yeah. So I do have those. But no, the Depression would have been before. I remember them talking about it, but no, that was before 31. So.
Do you remember your mom saying if it was really hard times or?
Oh yeah, she used to say she would wonder where she was going to find 1 cent to mail a letter. That's all it was 1 cent. And she didn't know where she'd find 1 cent to mail a letter. Now we pay 46. Yeah.
What things do you remember about wartime?
Well, I was a very nervous person, so I remember even way back here in the country, they told us to pull our it was green shades we had, pull them when you lit the kerosene lamp at night. And this made me a little fearful, because you would hear an airplane once in a while. And it was supposed to be that, it might be enemies and whatnot, so you should keep all light from showing, which I'm sure them up in the sky would not see light from a kerosene lamp, which isn't very bright, but we did have to pull our shades. I remember that. And then there was the, that explosion. What year was that in Halifax? My brother and wife were there. And they had to lay flat on their face in Citadel Hill. And I forget, that was, sometime between 39 and 45. I forget what year it was there. The first one, Halifax explosion, would have been before I was born. The real Halifax explosion. That was before I was born. Because I had an aunt that was secretary to a doctor up there. And it threw her against the table. and cut her cheek here so that she had to have stitches, and she was such a pretty woman, but she always had that scar. And of course she's dead now, but it was the Second World War I'm talking about. My brother, he still lives across the road here. He and his wife, and she'll be 90 in about a week. Anyway, they were there because he didn't go overseas. He didn't pass to go overseas, but he was like driving army trucks and things like that, and he was flat-footed, but there was things he could do, and he didn't pass to go overseas. So anyway, when that explosion was in Halifax, and we wondered what was going on with them all day long, we felt our windows rattle and dishes rattle here. Yeah.
How do you think the war affected your community?
Well, I don't know. Everybody worried about your closest that were, you know, in active duty. Like, well, of course, I didn't know my husband's brother, but he had a brother killed over there, who was buried over there, that went over on the same boat as my brother did, that was wounded and come back here and built the store. And you wasn't always hearing like you would like to, you know what I mean? You're just wondering, well, where are they tonight? And things like that. And my brother, when he come back, he would talk to my oldest brother a little. I mean, they're both dead now. But he would talk to my oldest brother a little about what he went through, but never to anybody else much. No, he just wanted to forget it all. He wouldn't talk about it. No, he had the bullet went right in through, right over the top of the heart, and it come out right at the back here, so that the scar at the back was worse than this was. This was more like a hole a bullet would go in, but where it come out, it was ragged, and so he had a scar like about that long with stitches where it come out. Well, it was a sniper, you see, that did this. So they rushed him. He was in Italy, and he had very little for pain. They got him in an airplane and rushed him to England. Now that would be quite a ways then. From Italy to England is where he was put in hospital to fix the wound. I mean, they took care of the bleeding and things like that, but he didn't have much for pain. And so that was... And then he come home here and he run that store for I forget how many years. And it was a booming business. Oh, he was doing good. He had to build bigger. The bigger store burned a few years ago. It changed hands a few times, but it burned. But that one wasn't big enough. The original is there, but first off, it wasn't big enough for groceries, so he went out that way with a little shed roof for groceries. Then it wasn't big enough. He come this way with a feed shed, which was feed for cattle, you know. Well, I had to look after both when I was there. Of course, I couldn't lift the feed, but I'd go to the feed shed with them and see, you know, that they got the right kind, and I had the price and everything there to know what they owed me, things like that. Well, then it wasn't big enough, and he built another one a lot bigger, and then he had a delivery business with his own half-ton. So people would call in and want something, and we'd pack up just maybe in a box or something that we'd unpacked, you know, and he'd take it to the different homes, and sometimes it paid him, sometimes it was charge accounts. A few he never got, never would get. And then a few that did owe him, he would take a calf, maybe, on, this is getting away from myself, I suppose, but he would take a calf on trade for what they owed a store bill, and he'd tie it out in the field, and out back of the store there, and it would eat, you know, all summer, and he'd feed it and whatnot, so it grew, and in the fall, he would have it killed. My brother was handy at killing the beef, and you didn't have to go through inspections with this and that like now. And as long as it was clean and whatnot, what I mean, they cut it up and sold it and through the store. So this way, it was paying for the groceries that he had charged, you know. Yeah. And then a lot would cut pulpwood. he dealed in pulpwood, and the railroad track run out there in North Range. I don't know if you even know where it is, but anyway, they've taken it up. So my husband had a 3-ton truck, and he used to load boxcars there with pulpwood that my brother Donald was sending for sale. And this pulpwood, a lot of it was what he had taken in on grocery bills that people owed him.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you plan for hard times or retirement?
Back then, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I tell you, there wasn't much planning at that point. Way back then, parents stayed in their own home, and someone of the family moved in to care for them, which that isn't anymore. You go in nursing homes now. And I know my grandmother, when she lived here, her old age pension was $7 a month. And I can't remember what Dad was getting. He got it at 70, like for that 7 years. I can't remember what he was getting. He died in 58. But in 68, when my mother died, she was getting the top pension. It was $105 a month. That was the best they did. So she was always talking about, have to save it up for in case of sickness and things like this, But she lived here till, and we lived right here with her, and was able to take care of, like, she had diabetes, and bad enough that I gave her insulin by needle every morning for 8 years. And when she went to hospital at the last, she was there 3 weeks, last 2 days, and died. So there was no need for her to go in a nursing home, but there wasn't any nursing homes then anyway. So she kept active right up till then, but it was just, you tried back then, I think, to save what money you could for when you got older and you might need care and might be sick. But as far as making plans for, your future going in a home, you couldn't do that then. No, you can now, but...
How would you say people helped each other out in days gone by that would be different from today?
Nobody expected pay when there was sickness. You just automatically went and did what you could do for that person. And taking in food, or, well, I can remember my mom taking, going to a few homes where they were bedridden. She'd bath them and whatnot like that, I wasn't much at nursing, things like that. I don't think I could have did the things she did. But anyway, nobody expected pay. It was just, you was to help each other all you could help. Now everybody gets paid. They have home care ladies, things like this, yeah.
What different things do you remember about the poor farm?
I remember it being there, but I don't know that I was ever inside. You know where it was, do you? Marshalltown is where it was. And I remember, seeing it there year after year, and I always passed by it going to town when we went that way. But anyway, I don't know. I knew the names of a few, but I didn't personally know anyone that was in there. And at that time, there was like overseers that looked after planting a garden way at the back. So some of those inmates were able to work in the garden. They weren't all handicapped, that they couldn't do things. So it was like a poor farm, but they was living there for free, and if they could plant a garden, well, this helped. Yeah.
So at what point would someone have to go to the poor farm?
Well, if you didn't have any money to take care of you, and if you was unable, some were unable to, not capable of taking care of themselves, or, well, in some cases it was a little this way too, they didn't know how to spend their money, and so in some cases it was mental that would land them in there, and still with somebody overseeing or bossing them, they could work in the garden and things like that, Yeah, they weren't all, well, physically handicapped. Some of it was mental, you know.
How important was politics in those days?
Didn't mean a thing to me. I didn't understand it, and when I got to the age to vote, my brother that had the store, he was at me all day long to go vote. And I was wishing he'd leave me alone, because I didn't know one thing what was going on. And to me, it was something serious, you know. I thought my one vote was going to make such a big difference, you know. And I used to think, why don't he leave me alone? I don't know what I'm voting for. And he said, but it's your privilege. It's your right. You go vote. And he kept at me all day long. But it still doesn't mean anything to me, really. You know, I go because my husband thinks we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Describe what South Range was like when you were growing up. How bustling it was, ice cream parlors, anything like that.
No, there wasn't even, when I was growing up, there wasn't even a store right here. I mean, Doseville was the handiest that way, and the post office up this way, she had just a few little things in her store. No ice cream, was just, maybe candy bars, you know, things like that. And if you needed school supplies, scribbler pencil or something like that, a few little things like that. But no, it was, the stores weren't close at all, you know. It was just, well, we didn't get to Digby all that often, but you went if you had to, you know. And then, I mean, there was the catalogs, Eaton's, Tea and Company and Sears, Simpsons it was then, Simpsons and Eaton's. And you'd send orders. We had no telephone, so you'd send orders through the mail, you see. And then the parcel, you could prepay, send it with your, you could send the money, no tax on anything then. You could send the money along with your order, and or you could send COD. And then if you, COD means cash on delivery. When the mailman brought it, you could pay him. Now, he didn't have to bring it. We had a really good mailman, I mean, there for years. I mean, there were several, but I mean, the one I remember the most, he didn't have to pay that, but he would pay that at the post office and bring you your order, and you'd pay him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he did that. He trusted people, yeah.
How was the law enforced back then?
Well, sometimes I think maybe it was more strict than now. I don't know. It seems to me that this younger generation, they act up and they get away with things that I don't think they could have years ago. Of course, I didn't know anything about drugs years ago, and there's drugs everywhere now that maybe it just gives them all the grit or whatever to do all these things that, I don't know. You hear tell us so many murders and whatnot. Back then, it was just, you know, the occasional one. Now, well, maybe it's because we hear so much, I suppose, on the TV news, you know. We didn't know back then because we didn't hear about it.
What was the largest employer in this area?
Well, Tupper Warren's way back would have been a Digby business. I don't know if you know anything about where the recycling place is for deposits down. That is where Tupper Warren had a really big business down there. Now, he's in my Sabin genealogy book, so somewhere he's connected to the Sabins. But he had a booming business there. I mean, he had a store and, you know, a mill, and, it was like a box factory, and, different. With the mill, they had, like, lumber, and they'd plane it. You could have rough lumber, plain lumber, and all this, and, they even had big piles of sawdust, so I had an uncle that his job was to wheel sawdust in the wheelbarrow all day. So that was the booming business, and he bought, this Tupper one bought woodlots, you see, all out and around this area. And then he'd have them logged and whatnot. So there was that one for Digby, and then in Weymouth was, what was his first name? They called him Pa Taylor. His first name was not Pa, but anyway, Taylor it was in Weymouth, what I remember. And then, of course, the Lewis lumber mill that's there now, that started up. I think while Taylor's was still running, I think that started. The Irving owns that Lewis one now, you know. The J.D. Irving's own it, yeah. But it's still going under the name of Lewis Sawmill. But anyway, that would have been started up by Harry Lewis while Taylor's was still, I think, a business there, yeah.
Do you know how many people Tupper Warrens would have employed? Was it a lot or a small?
Well, no, my husband know more about that than I would. No, I really don't know, but with the ones that logged here and there in the different areas, you know, I suppose it could have taken in maybe 100 with, you know, just a rough guess, because he had people working in the woods for him here, there, and everywhere. And then you see they'd haul the logs in, which meant a truck driver. That was another hired man, you know. And then they had their own machines, like for grading the roads, and they didn't have log lifts like they do now. They had to roll them on with peavies, the big logs. And they wouldn't have the big trucks like they got now. Like my husband's was a 3-ton. They had no tandems way back then, that, you know, the double wheels. So it was just roll them on with a peavy, if you know what it is.
I don't know what a peavy is, no.
Well, it's it has a long handle like this, and then there's an iron hook that's kind of on a pivot, and you hook the log with that and roll it on, and it wouldn't roll back on you. So this was, they used to have to load, they'd put a, they'd try to build it up a little where they piled the logs, so they weren't really flat on the ground. And then they'd put like 2 poles or maybe small logs up to the truck body, and it had no sideboard on, see? And then they'd roll these with a peavy up on these 2 poles till they got their load on. And then they used to have to put a chain around that buckled there to hold the logs tight. No sideboards. Okay. Yeah.
What do you remember about tourism in days gone by?
Not a whole lot about it. Not really. No.
Was there many tourists that ever came to this area that you remember?
Well, our house was always filled every summer, but I don't know that they were tourists. They were relatives.
Right. Okay.
And back then it was the wringer washer, and we had a clothesline down back. There was apple trees out in this corner behind the house, and with some of the hurricanes they've blown up, so we had to cut them up. But anyway, we used to tie a clothesline there and hook it to an old corner, the corner of an old building down there. And I used to have like 12 sheets or more in one wash after they'd all leave, but it was relatives, you know, and it was breakfast, dinner, and supper. You're planning a meal for the table. I'd go to bed at night and I'd think, oh, what am I putting on the table tomorrow, you know? Yeah. So I can't say there were tourists, but there were tourists came, I know, to the area, but I can't say that any of ours were tourists. They were relatives.
How superstitious were people when you were growing up?
Well, there were some superstitious. Well, I, for one, worried over seeing one crow sorrel.
Right.
Yeah. And then I always liked cats, and of course it would bother me if a black cat crossed the road in front of us, because that was a bad sign. If it was all black, you'd look for a white spot or whatever. But I know there's several that was superstitious of Friday the 13th. Right. Well, I was born on the 13th. And my brother was 13 when I was born. I was married 13 years when I had one daughter. So I was never superstitious at 13.
Right. Wow. What is the worst weather you can remember around here?
Well, a few hurricanes that I didn't remember we had when I was real small, but whatever year it was, we had Edna and Hazel. That year was, I think, maybe the early 50s. there was apple trees in rows. It was like an orchard from here to the intersection. And they all got rooted up in those 2 or 3 hurricanes. And, of course, at that time, like I said, we used to like the apples. And then it got so that if you didn't spray, they're always wormy. We never had spray way back, and we had good apples. They never were wormy. So anyway, we got them cleared out of there. And then another one I remember what we call a groundhog storm was February 2nd. What year that was, I can't remember now. That was a bad one. I don't know if it would be as long as 25 years ago, maybe. But my brother now that lives there, my brother Donald had been killed. I didn't get to tell you, my brother Donald went through the war, and then after all this booming business, didn't he get killed, was hit on an intersection out in Bloomfield. He had the half-ton pickup when a 3-ton truck hit him inside. So he went through the war and was wounded, and then he was killed out there. So then my brother took over the store, just about a year older, a year and so many months. He took over the store after that, and it was when my brother that's living now had the store that we had that groundhog storm. I can't remember the year. I know it's written down somewhere. But anyway, he'd gone in for lunch right around 12, and he just got in the house in time. He had a carport on this end, and it blew the whole carport right off of the house, and some of it down on the car. And with the jar, it took their chandelier off of the ceiling, and it went everywhere, you know. So that was quite a bad storm, and every one of our windows was like a saltwater spray that we could not get washed even in the spring. We worked and worked. It was like, we're 5 miles in from the salt water, but it was like a saltwater spray come with that terrible wind and, well, rain and sleet and everything else with it. So that was a bad one. Yeah. And we always call it the groundhog storm. So if you ever hear it, that's the one, because, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you know about shipwrecks around here?
Shipwrecks? Not really that much, no. No, we're in 5 miles in from salt water.
Do you remember hearing of any big shipwrecks, though?
Well, this one, they talk about that Titanic there. I've got a postcard with that picture of that on and all the details on that. And I thought when they was making the movie and everything about it, I mean, this wasn't anything new to me because we'd always had that, you know, Titanic postcard. Yeah. So, no, I really don't know much about shipwrecks, no.
What ghost stories can you remember from your younger years?
Well, there's a funny one. I didn't believe it, of course. Mm-hmm. Between here and our church, which our church is about a mile from here, there are 2 cemeteries, one on the right and one on the left. They're community cemeteries, but the Baptist church has started the one on the left, and on the right was started by an Anglican church. And before the road was paved, I can remember this deep, well, it was like you go right down quite a steep hill, and it was a hollow. And then you come up quite another little raise in the road. Well, when they paved the road, they brought it up straight, see, so it's quite level there now. But there's still that little gully there where there's a brook crossed and water trickles down. Well, I didn't believe it, but they always was this crazy story that 12 o'clock at night, somebody without a head crossed the road there. Because the cemeteries are on both sides of the road. Okay. That was just so crazy. Okay. That was a real ghost story, yeah.
What colorful characters can you remember from around here?
I don't know, really, on that one.
What do you remember about Maud Lewis?
Well, I remember her, and really her husband was related to my mother. Yeah. What I remember about Maud Lewis, her husband, and you've heard this or read it, her husband had that Model A, Model T, whichever, that Ford there with the cloth top, you know?
Yeah, I think
Model A or Model T, or
yeah.
whatever. It's in all the readings, yeah. Anyway, we lived, like I said, at that blue house. And he always peddled smoked fillet. And it's partly cooked. You could eat that raw and enjoy it, you know. It's partly cooked. From when they smoke it, it gets overheated. And it wasn't artificial smoke those days. It was a real smokehouse. They had it in. So anyway, he went through, I know every week, maybe more than once a week. And it would be my sister's girls that lived down there, me up there. We used to try our best to get close to the vehicle, his old Model T or whatever it was, because his wife was always with him, but she wouldn't let us see her. And I didn't know why. She used to get like this, and, you know, we didn't know why she wouldn't let us see her, and that made us more curious as kids to see what she looked like. She wouldn't let us see her. I didn't know until she could become famous with painting that she had no chin, and she was conscious of it. And so she didn't want us looking at her, but it made us more curious, you know. And so anyway, then the story is that he was murdered in the end. I mean, she died first, and then he was in the same little house there, and he took up painting, but he hadn't done it long enough to become famous. But the story is that he was murdered, so I don't know. But anyway, I remember him and oh yes, I've talked to him, you know, and real tall man he was, and no teeth, had both sets out, and had never had false ones put in, and anyway, yeah, he was distant relative to my mother, because my mother's mother was a Lewis, yeah. Mm.
How would you compare life in general today to days gone by?
I think we were happier back years ago. Mm-hmm. You made your own fun. You know, it was parties and quilting bees, you know. I've gone to a lot, well, we still do have quilting parties, you know. But when we used to go to quiltings, if someone had a quilt in the frame, all the ladies would go for early afternoon, stay through the supper hour, and then the men would come in the early evening, and they'd visit in one room with each other while the ladies were all in the other room quilting. And then between 9 and 10 o'clock, we'd have lunch and, you know, go home. It could be we would have finished the quilt, and I've seen the time when we put another in the frame. And it was fun. You were just talking and laughing, making your own fun, you know. Yeah. There wasn't the stress there is today. No, I think it was more relaxing. Yeah.
When you were married, how many children did you have?
I just had one.
And what's your husband's full name?
Elton, E-L-T-O-N, Wallace, W-A-L-L-A-C-E. And we were married 13 years when she was born. And just thought we'd never have any, because we never tried to keep from having any. So I just never thought I'd have any, you know. And so she was born after my dad died, and she was only 4 when my mum died. So I said, when I come in this house with my mum and dad, there was 3 of us. Then Elton and I, when we were married, he moved in, made 4. Dad died, we were back to 3. And then Paula was born, we were back to 4. And then Mum died, back to 3 again. So, anyway, down to 2. Yeah, and she's up there at Mount St. Vincent, so she'll be there till she retires, I'm sure. She's got 3 degrees. She did it all on her own, too, because her dad was sick. Couldn't help her. Was just with a student loan and working. She worked at the Metropolitan, which is a sand store in Digby now. It was the Metropolitan. And she worked there, like weekends, while she was in Digby School, like through her grade 10, 11, and 12. She worked there weekends. Got herself into the office. She started out as a cashier, and then she was out on the floor, and then they put her in the office. And then when she talked about going to college, I said, but you can't go to college. It's only people with money goes to college. Well, she'd go to school with her story, and she was tops in all her classes. She was always in an honor class. Not that she was any smarter than the others. It was just that she wanted to do these things. She studied to do these things. And, I mean, the others could have did the same that was, you know, in her grade, a lot of them, but they just didn't care about studying, you know. But she wanted to get ahead. So, anyway, she had to study hard. I know, she worked at it. Well, then the teachers would say, oh, but you need to go to university. So she'd come home again and tell me the story, and I'd say, oh, but how are you going to? So then they started giving her literature from all the different universities so she could read up on it. And then she worked through student loans, and he was in hospital 6 times in the year 84. He's full of synthetic arteries. They come right out of his heart here. He had a blockage here, so he's got synthetic whatever it is, Teflon or plastic or something, I don't know. And then they cut down both groins to do with the circulation. And then after that he had the hiatus hernia repair, so they went right around here the same year. So I tell you, it was terrible that year, and that was when she was needing to plan ahead, you know, for what she was going to do. No way we could help her. People was giving us money. We'd go to the mailbox for get well cards, and there'd be money fall out of it when you opened it. I can't tell you how much we got, but it was all kinds of money. He wasn't earning anything, but I never had any fear about not having enough to live on. I'd never even thought of that. It was just to have him get better. So then finally through the doctor, he got on a disability pension, Canada Disability, and he was on that until the Canada pension starts at 60, I believe it was, and then that automatically drops a disability. You got more on disability than you do Canada pension, but it would be from what he paid in. And so then at 65, then he drew old age, and of course I drew old age now. So I never worried about that, you know. But anyway, she had nothing, no help from us. So it was just working through the government with student loans. And so she got her 2 degrees there at Mount St. Vincent and got hired on. And they wanted her to go for her master's to hold her job. And they said they'd give her 3 years along with teaching to get it. And it was through Acadia. So it was night classes in Wolfville and in Bridgewater when she was teaching days, and she had to drive that nights in the winter and what all, you know, for like 3.5 years. They gave her 3 years. She was 3.5 getting it. Then she graduated through Acadia with her master's. So she's got 3 degrees now. So I'm thinking she'll be at the Mount till she retires. Yeah. She married, but I don't think they'll have any family. She's terrified of a needle. She can't stand. She can't stand.
I'm like that too, really. I'm afraid of
Oh,
needles.
well, I don't know.
Finished? That was like
And you
2
got it all on,
hours.
get it all on tape.
Oh, I'm worried. We had, when I went to do Sue Bragg, and she was, I felt so bad because she was all wired up, and I said, at any time, if you need to get out, just let me know. I thought, my goodness, she's so old and living there all by herself. It's